Hello! How are y'all today?
How are you?
Thank you. If everyone can find a seat, there are no seats taken yet up here at the front table. Plenty of seats right here on the front row. Thank you all for being here today. My name is Jason Mumpower. I'm the Chief of Staff for the Tennessee Comptroller of the Treasury, and we are thrilled at this great turnout today. I can tell you that we have already doubled the number who RSVP'd. So I'm glad we had some extra chairs here. We were expecting about half this many, but we're thrilled at this turnout. We're thrilled that you're all here. Of course, we're here tonight because we, the Comptroller's Office, has been asked by the Tennessee Legislature to collect public comment about legislation that's being considered in Nashville dealing with whether or not there should be a fee schedule for inspection of open records. We at the Comptroller's Office house the Office of Open Records Counsel. The Open Records Counsel is here, Ann Butterworth. Many of you know her. And we are here tonight to do just what the legislature has asked us to do, to collect your comments, to take your voice back to your legislators in Nashville, legislators beyond your personal community, legislators from across the state. We do have one legislator here tonight, Dr. Bob Ramsey from Blount County, who's chairman of the State Government Committee in the House of Representatives, and we're glad to have him. Again, your voice is important. That is why the legislature asked us to come out and collect it. We're holding a series of public hearings. Tonight's the first one here in Knoxville. Tomorrow will be the second one, held in Nashville. And Thursday will be the third one to be held in Jackson, Tennessee. One thing I will say about this is our office, to coin a term, we are not the decider. We are the collector. We are the collector of your comments. We are the collector of your voice. And I assure you, every comment that's made tonight will be recorded and provided to the legislature. Every comment that you email in, every comment that if you want to put a stamp on something and mail it in, if you want to hand it to us, if you want to send a carrier pigeon and you can get it to the state capitol building, we'll take it that way too. Because we know the legislature wants to hear your voice. The process tonight is going to be simple. I think those of you who came in had an opportunity to sign up. When you signed up, you indicated whether or not you wanted to speak. One thing I will say tonight, and I know from seeing the sign-in sheet, is that there are people here tonight with different opinions. And so when someone speaks and they might have a different opinion than yours, we'll ask you to treat them with respect, and we'll ask everybody just to do that. That, I hope, is something that goes without saying, but something we want to make sure that everyone adheres to, because different people have different views. It appears that we have around 25 or 30 people who...
More than that.
We have more than that?
Yes.
How many people do we have right now?
We haven't quite finished tallying, but I think we have at least 40.
We have at least 40 persons
that want to speak.
So if we have indeed 40 people that want to speak, that's going to allow about 2.5 minutes for your comments. The way we're going to do it tonight is we're going to ask you, when you speak, to come to this podium. We're also going to announce who the next two people are. So the first speaker will come to the podium and speak. The second person, you come right here in the on-deck chair. And the third person, you come in the chair behind them. And that way we won't lose time from people getting up and coming up. We'll have a constant stream of people coming up to speak. And in that, we have about 40 people at the start. Again, we're going to have about roughly, John, is that right, about 2.5 minutes?
Yep, that would be about right.
Rudy Basildua, who is sitting here at the front table, is going to hold up a sign for you when you have 30 seconds left. and then 30 seconds after that, he's going to hold the time's up sign. If that doesn't work, then Rudy's going to go like this. And then the person that wants to go next is going to drag you out of the way and jump in your position. So be ready to do that if that's you on deck, okay? I did also, and I just did introduce Rudy Basildua, who works in the Comptroller's office. John Dunn is the Comptroller's Public Information Officer. We're pleased to have all of them with us, with you here in Knoxville. Again, let me say that I understand 2.5 minutes may not allow you to say every word you want to say. That doesn't mean your voice is not heard, because we have multiple means of hearing your voice. We'll take your written comment. We'll take your emails. There are surveys out there that I know you have filled out already. So please, when you come up, be thinking right now what you want to say. Be knowing that you need to say it in 2.5 minutes. If you hear somebody in front of you say exactly what you had on your mind, you can say, boy, I agree with them. Also, if you are here as part of a group, we're going to take one speaker per group so that we can allow as many people to speak as possible. As you can see, we still have people coming in the door. With that, I want to just reiterate how much we appreciate very much your interest in this issue, how much we appreciate the members of the Advisory Council on Open Government, who Ann is going to introduce. And again, I can tell you, having been a member of the state legislature myself in the past, your voice really is valued, and this is one way the legislature goes about collecting your voice, and so we appreciate you being part of that. With no further ado, I'll turn it over to Ann Butterworth, the Open Records Counsel.
Thank you all for being here today, and we really do appreciate your interest and concern in this issue. As we are going to be asking you to do to adjust your comments based off of what the prior speaker has said, let me adjust mine a little bit. The advisory committee, I have that we have Chad Jenkins, if you could raise your hand. We have Vivian Underwood Shipe, and also have Fred Fields, and also have Representative Bob Ramsey, who's in the back of the room. Do we have any other members of the advisory committee? Oh, I'm sorry. So if you would stand up and introduce yourself, please.
Rick Hollow.
The advisory committee provides an important role to the Office of Open Records Counsel. Rick is one of the premier attorneys in the area of public records. The other members on the committee provide great advice, and they are here today to help listen to your comments. We are here because public records in Tennessee, access to those public records, are provided for by legislation adopted by the General Assembly. And the Tennessee Public Records Act is found in the code in 107-503 and the code sections following it. However, the exemptions to the Public Records Act are found throughout the law, as well as in court decisions and rules. The hearing we have today is going to be limited to the Tennessee Public Records Act and records held by Tennessee governmental entities, and we will not be discussing issues governed by FOIA, which governs federal entities. The Tennessee Public Records Act grants Tennessee citizens the right to inspect and to receive a copy or duplicate of public records that have not been specifically made confidential or closed to public inspection. It is important to note that taxpayer status is not a prerequisite to inspect or receive duplicates from any of the entities that are governed by the Tennessee Public Records Act. Many entities are not taxing authority and do not receive tax revenue. An example would be a utility district. Generally speaking, a requester cannot be required to put their request to inspect in writing or to disclose the purpose or motivation behind their request. A custodian cannot deny a Tennessee citizen the right to inspect an open public record on the basis that that requester does not live within the community or is not a customer or client of the entity. The Public Records Act is not the only means of access to records held by governmental entities. Other provisions of law make records available, such as the Open Meetings Act that makes minutes of meetings of governing bodies open for public inspection. The Tennessee Public Records Act directs record custodians to make open public records available promptly. And again, as I mentioned before, although the Public Records Act starts with the presumption that a record will be open for inspection unless otherwise provided by law, the exemptions are numerous and scattered throughout the law. They also change. A record custodian is obligated to maintain as confidential any record or information designated as such and may not permit public inspection of any record that has been made confidential. Under current law, a record custodian is expressly not permitted to charge for staff time locating and preparing records, including redaction, if the requester only wishes to inspect. Those costs may be recovered if the requester asks for copies. Labor and charges are governed by the schedule of reasonable charges established by the Office of Open Records Counsel with the advice and input from the Advisory Committee. This hearing is being recorded, and as indicated, we would ask that you speak clearly. And we will start. I have that Miss Linda No.
And if I can, one real quick, does anyone not understand the process? Does everybody understand the process of speaking and then the two on deck chairs? Is everybody good with that?
And restrooms.
Restrooms are right through this door, or you can go out that back door and come up the hall. I'm going to try to roll some more chairs in right here. We have a seat right here next to Rudy. We have a seat right here next to Mayor Frank. Anybody else have any seats next to you back there? No. Again, it's a blessing that you're all here, but because it's kind of double or maybe more what we expected, I apologize. We'll get seats in here as soon as we can. Quick question, yes.
Yeah, a couple of process ones. You've indicated you cut the time to 2.5 minutes, yet the rule said at least 3 minutes, but not exceeding 5, so I'd ask us to go back to the 3. And then also if you would explain where it says speakers will be limited in their comments to 5 questions. In which way do you plan to address those questions?
The 5 questions that we presented, we want folks to limit their comments to that. For example, we do not wish people to discuss which records should be open and which records should be closed.
So you're referring to these 5 records?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So,
You know, in my opinion, I think that's a good point. We can go to 3 minutes. But we will not extend it past the speakers who were here at the time.
Yes.
So I think that's very fair. That's 120 minutes, and we're starting. Our goal was to start at 15 after an opening comment, and it's 14 after. So take it away, Ann. I'll get some more chairs as we can.
Linda No. And then next up I have Chris Cawood. Is Chris here? Jack McElroy. And then I have Kim Law.
Be sure that they're okay to start. Should I go ahead, Ms. Butler?
Yes, please.
Okay. I'm Linda Noe. I'm a citizen activist and an attorney, and I oppose charging fees for inspection of public records. I know firsthand, and I appreciate what citizens go through when they speak or when they seek public information in order to hold their government accountable. Many of you here today may have heard of the recent situation in Loudoun County and the county's $6,000 legal bill for handling a public document request by my client, Richard Truitt, who is here today. Today I want to share some information with you about that because there's been a lot of misinformation and disinformation, and this has sort of been used as a whipping boy for this move to charge for inspection. It all started with the chairman of the commission deciding he was going to reduce the public comments at meetings from 2 to 1. Mr. Truitt was concerned, so he asked for the correspondence between the mayor, or to and from the mayor and to and from the 10 commissioners related to the agenda change and in general to county business. And you might ask, why did he ask for just county business rather than just the agenda items? Well, with the secrecy surrounding the agenda item change, which was just unilateral, boom, it's done, Mr. Truitt was concerned that there was also other public business being conducted by emails or meetings. The mayor did not respond to Mr. Truitt's request. He picked up the phone and called the county attorney, that $250 an hour attorney. Mr. Truitt was right about his suspicions. Unfortunately, a lot of the email discussion shows contempt for citizens and a culture of government secrecy aided by the county attorney. It's easy to say you're for open government. I don't know anybody that says they're not for open government, but it's what you do that counts. Whenever you hear representatives of Loudoun County today, remember two words: money and secrecy. Why would the mayor call on someone who charges $250 an hour to handle a clerical job that primarily requires a phone, hey, send me your emails, send me your correspondence, and a copy machine to make the copies and then provide them? Remember this email where the mayor decides he wants to keep certain solid waste board documents away from a solid waste board commissioner. Mayor to attorney. If the wrong member gets their hands on this, it will be handed out to anyone and everyone. Can we do something to make it confidential? Remember this email where a commissioner says of a constituent who requested public document, I wouldn't give her anything. When you hear Loudoun officials talk about public records requests as though they are some form of paper terrorism requiring calling an attorney into combat to lead the troops, remember that the Loudoun County attorney has also been quoted as saying that Mr. Truitt's request was unlawful from the start. One last sentence. Why would an attorney charge his client, Loudoun County, over $6,000 for an unlawful request?
Ms. Ogle, speak. If you can come up there.
Thank you. My name is Jack McCollough. I'm editor of the News Sentinel and president of the Tennessee Press Association. TPA represents 26 daily and 95 non-daily newspapers in Tennessee. We were founded 5 years after the Civil War and are the voice of the state's of the newspaper industry since then. I'm only going to address the first question, and the answer is no. We do not believe that the law should permit charges for inspection of public records. The experience of our members makes clear that some government bodies will use per-hour labor charges deliberately to block access to public records. Even if blocking is not a deliberate intent, the expense will have that effect. Newspapers seeking copies of records increasingly are facing fees exceeding $1,000. Recent example, a Chattanooga Electric Power Board charging $3,837 for copies of advertising records. These charges add up. In 2011, the state estimated that the charges for inspection of records would total $1.7 million a year. Much of that cost would be borne by newspapers whose role and responsibility it is to monitor the workings of government. Supposedly, this is money that would be saved by government, but in fact, the opposite will prove true. Watchdog journalism provides an important check and balance on government waste, and without that public scrutiny, more excesses will emerge. In recent years, public records reporting by newspapers in Tennessee has uncovered numerous instances of costly waste. Examples just in Knoxville include thousands of dollars in unearned bonuses in the Knox County Trustee's office, hundreds of thousands of dollars owed by Knoxville country clubs that were illegally dodging property taxes, and millions of dollars in pension payments to the young children and even grandchildren of Knoxville City retirees. These reports prompted government reforms that brought savings to the taxpayers far exceeding the costs of producing records. Adding hundreds of thousands of dollars of additional expenses to Tennessee's newspapers will certainly result in a reduction in watchdog reporting. Now, while some public officials might welcome relaxed scrutiny, thoughtful ones will recognize that the ultimate cost will be an increased waste and corruption. The Tennessee Press Association believes there are better ways to reduce the burden of fulfilling public records requests than imposing fees. Thank you.
Richard Truitt.
Good afternoon. My name is Kim Loth, and I'm the second Vice President of the League of Women Voters for the state of Tennessee. The League of Women Voters of Tennessee is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government. The League of Women Voters of Tennessee opposes inspection fees for public records. While some may feel that fees to inspect public records are an effective way to reduce burdensome requests, we suggest fees for inspecting records are akin to a poll tax for accessing government. Some citizens will not be able to afford the labor fees and thus will be blocked from accessing public records. Governmental entities should be encouraged to make as much public information readily accessible as possible, and fees send the message that they are doing the citizens a favor by providing information. It's the responsibility of government entities to maintain records in an efficient way to respond to requests for public records. Fees for inspecting records could morph into a revenue source for entities and could easily be inflated by padding the amount it takes to compile a request. Fees discourage entities from keeping records in a readily accessible way in the first place. Discussion between the requester and the government entity should be required if a request is particularly large or cumbersome. This would allow the government staff more flexibility as well as create a more efficient process for both the citizen and the governmental entity. Efforts should be made to assist the requester in narrowing or focusing the scope of the request when appropriate. The Office of Open Records Counsel should also consider developing best practices for the organizing of information to reduce the requirement and expense for redaction. For example, if personal emails are to be redacted, perhaps a policy targeted at reducing the use of government email addresses for personal emails could reduce redaction efforts. Frequently requested information such as meeting materials and audit reports should be routinely posted on a government entity's website in a timely manner. This is an efficient way to make the information readily accessible to a large number of people. However, we should not distinguish between the types of public record that people get to see because some records are judged to be created for public consumption. By setting up a two-tier system, we automatically say citizens should have access to some records but not to others. Citizens should be allowed to take pictures of public documents with their smartphones or other devices without being charged. This eliminates the direct expense of copies and the justification of a copy fee and encourages less use of paper. The League of Women Voters of Tennessee thanks you for the opportunity to provide input and strongly encourages that fees for public inspection of records not be allowed. Thank you.
Mayor Frank. Good afternoon. My name is Sally Oglesby. I've been the city clerk for Knoxville for over 30 years. First of all, I want to state that I have no objection to providing any records to anyone that requests them. I also have no problem with providing easily accessible documents for inspection at no charge. By easily accessible, I'm referring to those items such as audits, minutes, ordinances, reports, agenda packets, etc. Most of these type items are posted to our website or are immediately available. However, we also often get requests that are purely for harassment purposes. They are generally not aimed at the clerk or the records custodian, but at government in general. They have no particular objective, but just to be disruptive and hope they can come up with something. The requests can be very generic and not about a particular subject. We also have problems with requests that are investigative in nature and don't let us know what particular questions they are trying to answer so that we can advise them what records might be helpful. I will bend over backwards to get them the information they need if they will give me clear direction or sit down and have a discussion. I have nothing to hide nor the desire to hide anything, but I don't like wasting time with documents that I know will serve no valuable purpose. We as clerks run the risk of being accused of running up the cost by providing too much to make sure they get everything they requested, or hiding something because we don't give enough or miss something that they intended to have provided. I've had that happen to me, and we are in a no-win situation. I would like to address two particular issues that I've dealt with just in the last month that caused me concern. I had a request from a recently formed group mounting in opposition to the current city council that requested all correspondence of whatever type by and between any member of the city council, city attorney, city manager, and or city clerk. The initial request had a start date but no end date. I required an end date. The request was just for inspection. The request required me to contact all of those named and make the request so that they provided everything. Since the city council and the city attorney are not on the city's email server, I can't just pull directly from that. Because the city attorney was named, it was necessary to pay him to come and inspect all the documents that have been collected, ensure that no documents were released that contained confidential attorney-private client privilege. We also had to pay him for his time to gather his documents. Once I had the documents, I requested the requester who came and then decided he'd just pay for the copies. He paid me $19.95. I had bills from the attorney of over $300. In addition to the time. The second request is about electronic records. We have been receiving requests from a California company with an associate in Nashville for electronic report of all purchase orders and detailed information on all of our purchases and all of our vendors, everything we bought. Pat Hunter.
My name is Richard Truitt. I seem to be the poster boy from Loudoun County. Let me make a few comments. We have a situation where agendas was placed on the workshop. The chairman refused to explain further. Explained the changes after the public comment period was over and they had no chance to speak. Then was voted in by the commission before the public had a chance to speak. This violated all the rules and procedures and past precedent. They claim that their chairman did this all on his own. That story should begin once upon a time. As I explained, if they had followed their rules and procedures, we wouldn't have liked it, but we would have had to accept the outcome. There would have been no records request. They cut public right to speak in half and placed time restraints on the public right to speak. No discussions or reasons have ever been given. This is open government. I think it is simple. If you had better government where they followed their own rules and procedures, then the public wouldn't have to try and find out what's happening. My experience is a lot of public officials take an oath and walk out the door and forget that oath and deal in backroom government. If only they would follow the sunshine law. I guess what I'm trying to say is honesty. Thank you.
Tona Monroe.
Well, Mr. Mumpower, I severely miscalculated thinking you'd have about half the audience. So I tailored my comments for about 5 minutes, so I'll greatly reduce. It is inspiring to see so many people here, and I thank the Comptroller's office for having this hearing. I'm going to boil it down. First of all, to Mr. McElroy's comments and the League of Women Voters comments, ditto and old school here. I completely agree with those as the mayor. When we discuss larger public policy issues like transportation or medical care, we often discuss the costs of those services in terms of what effect will there be on access. If we start charging for inspection, I think you'll limit access by the very nature of the charge. So in regard to question number one, no. As President Truman said, secrecy and a free democratic government do not mix. And I would ask question number 5 from the Comptroller's office in the legislature is what other ideas or amendments should be made? If I may humbly offer my own perspective on what I believe is needed change. I'm asking there to be a reversal of thinking. I know it would require funding, perhaps through some type of grant scenario, but I believe a worthy goal is to somehow incentivize local governments to advance technologically, meaning that as a state and local government that we go about solving the problem of the man-hours spent on open records and inspection by allowing increased citizen and media access to government data. In a day when more and more documentation is available electronically, such technological advancement would not only relieve pressure on time spent answering open records requests or setting up open inspection opportunities, but could also work hand in glove with other missions of the Comptroller's office in terms of financial management and reporting. A familiar idiom is that many hands make light work. In the same vein, greater access through the help of technology, which our federal government does, will make light work, but also many hands, or more particularly, many eyes on government makes better government. In Anderson County, our goal in our Office of Accounts and Budgets is to reach a place in our future where we have an online, web-based, self-service citizen portal into government, of course, for the Comptroller's Office, with restricted access to information that's protected by law. I thank you for your time today.
Melissa Ogden.
Thank you, Mayor Frank, for those wonderful comments. I agree with them wholeheartedly. My name is Pat Hunter. I do not favor imposing new fees for inspecting public records. This would place a financial burden on citizens, and this would also be a serious setback for open government, transparency, and accountability. Public records are a gateway to information about how our government works, and we as citizens have a right to know how our government is proceeding. I agree with the digital age. We're far behind that. Our children are now at a point where they will be tested on computers, so we're behind the 8 ball here. We're going to talk about, I've heard about Mr. Truitt's public records request. I also looked at that information after I was told that I could not see it. It made me more determined to see it. But I can tell you one thing, and I'm going to deviate from what I was going to say originally. I saw 2,448 records, and I was appalled by how citizens are just spoken about in such an ugly way. You know, we live in a civil society, and yet the lack of civility with those comments were astounding. One thing that I did learn in looking at all those records, that most of those records, if not all, were created digitally. So imagine all the work that was taken to print those, when all you had to do was put it on a digital flash drive, or send them electronically, or put them on a DVD. Imagine all the time that was wasted and the cost was spent on an attorney when an IT guy could have done this easily. And I'm going to send the rest of my comments by email. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Tana Monroe. I'm a Blount County Commissioner. I wasn't always a Blount County Commissioner. I was a local citizen activist, and I thought by becoming a Blount County Commissioner that it might be a little easier to get access to records. And what I found out is that's not the case. You know, I think back over the years of some of the things, and I want to, I usually do an open records request for information. And if I don't get where I want with that, sometimes I'll request to inspect the records, and sometimes I'll go to Mrs. Butterworth and ask for her assistance. But I want to share a couple of things that have happened to me, both as a citizen and I did an open records request and request for information one time with the Blount County Sheriff's Office, and I filled out in writing what I wanted, mailed it off to the Sheriff's Office. They responded and told me, you got to come down here and give us your driver's license. So I thought, I had just done an open records request with the state and didn't have to drive to Nashville and hand my driver's license over to get the information. But I did that. I took my husband with me. I took a friend with me who is also now a county commissioner, and I took a member of the press with me. And they put us in the interrogation room when we got there. And then they made me sit there on camera in the interrogation room and tell them exactly what I had already put in writing and what I wanted. So, that type of thing happens to citizens. And now that I'm a commissioner, I frequently get emails and calls from people asking me to look into things because they don't know how to, or they're afraid to, or they don't have the time and they don't know how to follow up and actually get the information. And so I do that a lot for people that are not in my district. You wouldn't believe the number of emails that come in and say, I don't live in your district, but would you please look into blah, blah, blah. And I try to. I try to do that. And so I just want to share, I didn't save, I one time did a open records request, and the lady wrote me back, the records custodian, I forget her title, the archivist, I think, for the county, wrote me back and said it was going to be several $100s. I didn't save the email, so I don't remember the exact amount. And I couldn't believe it. And I was like, for a couple of records? So I went down there and did it myself and spent about $5 on copies, and found a whole lot more and got a whole lot more information. So I just want to share with people this is in a time of the NSA and the TSA, the last thing in the world we need to do is put more barriers up to government records. These are the records of the people. They're not the government, of the government, for the government, and by the government. It's government of the people, for the people, and by the people. Thank you.
You're here.
Buzz, Trexler, and please everyone check your cell phones and put them on silent.
Good afternoon. I think I just had a full circle moment. Dorothy Bowls is speaking after me, and she was my comm law professor when I was at UT, so it's good to see you again. My name is Melissa Ogden. I'm the Director of Public Affairs for the Knox County Schools. We're the third largest school system in the state. We have approximately 59,000 students and nearly 8,000 employees. I want to be clear. My intent in speaking today is not to block access to public records, to choke off citizen oversight, to restrict view, to charge excessive fees to taxpayers, or to place an unnecessary wedge in the public's right to know. During the past 2 to 3 years in my role as Public Affairs Director, I've seen requests for public records increase exponentially. For example, these requests have included seeking personnel files for all members of a particular department. Just today I had a request that consists of 72 personnel files, emails between individuals spanning multiple years, records regarding physical plant upgrades for the past 10 years. That request alone was 36 large binders and a large banker box full of records. Bus driver files, there's about 500 of those. And all maintenance work orders spanning multiple years. So when records of this magnitude are requested, it oftentimes takes a matter of months to pull the information together. This, in essence, equates to many unbudgeted man-hours for many people, reams upon reams of paper expended for a record that may only be merely inspected by the requester. Reams and reams of paper that have an unbudgeted expense tied to it. Staff members that have to be pulled away from the very important work of educating or helping to support the education of tens of thousands of children, thousands of educators, and numerous numbers of parents. So simply inspecting records is not necessarily that simple. Records still have to be redacted, copies still have to be made, quality checks conducted. We have to go through this process virtually every time, whether the requester seeks copies or merely an inspection. So this, in essence, is an unfunded mandate on our local governmental entities that we must comply with. To specifically address one question, should the Tennessee Public Records Act permit custodians to charge for inspection? The simple answer is no. I agree, no. But one suggestion is, how do we strike a balance to help the local governmental entities defray costs of these multiple man-hours and multiple materials that it takes to pull together these requests? And again, I want to be clear. I believe that information concerning the people's business is a fundamental and necessary right of every person in the state. Thank you.
Robert Bowman.
My name is Dorothy Bowls. I'm a professor emeritus at the University of Tennessee, on the executive board of the Tennessee Coalition for Open Government, a member of the Society of Professional Journalists. But I'm speaking here as a private citizen, drawing on my experiences of more than 50 years as a newspaper, corporate public relations work, and teaching journalism. And I thank the Office of Open Records Counsel for conducting these hearings. No, I do not think that the Tennessee Public Records Act should permit records custodians to charge for inspection. Democracy can't work if citizens don't know what's going on in public offices, as people have already stated. We've seen over the last 7 years, since records custodians have been able to charge for copies, that some, not all, but some records custodians have so abused this authority with their inflated labor charges that they've priced citizens out of their right to know how government performs. If I were still teaching, and if this bill were passed, I would no longer be able to teach my students how to go to a public office and inspect a public record, because typically students don't have money to spend on this. The University of Tennessee has a goal of becoming a top 25 research institution. I'm sure you've read and heard about this. But new expenses to access public records will negatively impact faculty research. I suggest that by improving education for records custodians, so they don't think that they need to routinely shift requests to expensive attorneys, could help the situation. Custodians would not have to become experts on all 350 plus exemptions to the Public Records Act, but they could become knowledgeable about those exemptions and general requirements that pertain to their particular offices. I think with education and training of personnel within these offices, that personnel that make less money than the attorneys, that they could save money. Melissa mentioned that this is an unfunded mandate. I really don't agree, because the law says that agencies are to create, maintain, and make available to citizens. So they should budget accordingly. The taxpayers are paying for that. Well, I see my time is up. I've got lots of comments that I will submit online, especially about questions 4 and 5. I don't think the current schedule takes into account the Tennessee Code annotated Section 604, and so I certainly wouldn't want it to be applied to any new fees. Thank you for scheduling these hearings.
My name is Buzz Trexler. I'm editor of the Daily Times, Blount County's newspaper of record since 1883. I would have given my time to Dorothy Herron, to be honest with you. Question 1, should Tennessee Public Records Act permit record custodians to charge for inspection of public records? I hear some anecdotes, but to my knowledge, there is little other evidence that public employees statewide are suffering from an epidemic of abusive and time-consuming requests to view public records. In fact, I would be interested to know whether any public official has taken advantage of the current Office of Open Records Counsel policy dealing with frequent and multiple requests for copies of public records, much less be able to document a need for legislation that would charge for viewing public records. Open public records are just that, records of governmental actions that should be open to the public without hindrance or unnecessary delay. When public employees take actions as part of the government, the records of these actions should be open to the public. Charging to view a public record creates an unnecessary level of bureaucracy, a hindrance to public participation in government, and opens the door to potential abuse by way of exorbitant and excessive charges. Such legislation does not serve the public interest and essentially taxes the public twice for the same service. Even if there is the occasional abuse by someone seeking to tie up a public official's time, passing legislation that allows charging to view a public record is a draconian measure that punishes the many for the abuse of the few. Questions 2 through 4, all of which deal with the scenario in which charges are allowed, are irrelevant to me as a citizen of Tennessee and a longtime journalist. There is no universe in which I believe charges for viewing public records should be permitted. However, I would like to address question 5. What amendments or changes should be made to the current schedule for reasonable charges related to duplication of public records, and why? The schedule of reasonable charges should be reviewed to strictly define what is meant by a reasonable fee, which one hopes would eliminate arbitrary and capricious charges that serve only to hinder or economically deny public access. Furthermore, it would seem that governmental entities should have a verifiable and uniform method for deriving at the actual cost of providing duplicated copies, particularly when charging above those suggested rates. In the spirit of the legislature, I plan to revise and extend my remarks.
Andrew Fells and Janet Jennings.
Good afternoon. My name is Buddy Bradshaw. I'm mayor of Loudoun County here in East Tennessee. I'm just going to talk about a few of the issues that we've had inside of Loudoun County. First, some misinformation has been circulated about an open records request that Mr. Truitt had made. The story going around is that I had attempted to charge a $6,000 fee for those to inspect those records. Absolutely false. Loudoun County and my administration, I'm going to take it back, I don't know about ever, my administration has never denied a request or charged a fee. Period. We even went so far as to turn the records over to Mr. Truitt when it was all said and done, as a measure of good faith. You can't charge for inspection. We know that, and so where that story came from, no idea. The 40-day time period for the county business was had a crippling effect on Loudoun County government. We're a small government. We have 50,000 citizens, 300 employees, and a $60 million budget. We operate with as few of people as possible in order to keep prices and taxes down. My IT department was more than half a week fixing this. My finance department very often is tied up. That's particular when my administrative assistant took 2 days for it, which ultimately resulted in me calling in another person to come in and fill in for her for a day in order to answer this request, and that's exactly what we did. As far as the accusations of why would we answer a unlawful request, good faith. That's we've got nothing to hide. There was nothing illegal in any of those, as much as the half-truths and conspiracy theories might like to suspect. Nothing illegal. We've got nothing to hide. We've hidden nothing. We have stayed above board on everything. I have no desire to limit the county's residents' access. I do not believe we should charge a fee. But I think that we have to have something reasonable as far as either the timeline to where a single citizen can't shut down a county department for a half a week or a full week. What if the next request is 120 days worth of stuff? What do we do then? Tell the county citizens, maybe we'll shut payroll down. Sorry, you all don't get paid. We have to have a balance, because I too am in charge of watching out for the taxpayer dollars. And that's what I promised to do as well. I've hidden nothing. I've maintained my promise. Look after taxpayer dollars, and that's what we're after. To his own admission, it was a retaliatory request because something the chairman, which is perfectly legal, perfectly in our book, did, and so in retaliation, that's what we got for it. I only ask that, again, be firmly reassured I have no desire to charge for inspection, but we have to have something to be able to protect the taxpayers. If there's something illegal I'm doing, absolutely out me on it. But we have to look out for taxpayers as well. And that $8,000, regardless of the opinion where it was, that's very well the third day a week for our veteran service officer or any other part-time position. Thank you all for your time.
William Bracken.
Hello, my name is Andrew Fells. I'm a second-year law student at the University of Tennessee, and this semester I've focused my studies on public interest law, and that's why I'm here tonight. I would like to devote the majority of my time to answering the first question. My answer is resounding no. No, we should not charge citizens for inspecting government records. My objection is grounded in the First Amendment right to petition the government. That's a very simple right. It ensures us the most basic means of resolving our disputes with our government, that we and our neighbors can take our grievances to our mayor, our member of Congress, and that we can be heard with the power by an official with the power to help us. And the Open Records Act serves the cornerstone of many petitions by providing proof of a problem's existence. If you think your child's school doesn't meet safety standards, or that a government contract was unfairly awarded, you can find out the truth. And then you can take it to an official and petition the government for relief. And should that petition fail, the same evidence can be used to initiate a lawsuit and exercise the due process right. But without that access to public records, citizens' constitutional rights have been preemptively abridged. Our state was acutely aware of this danger when we passed our Open Records Act. Any of our citizens can volunteer to take part in government oversight without state interference. That's a law we should be proud of. It's a law that's worked well, and it's a law I use. But the amendment we are discussing tonight would have us abandon constitutional privileges and open government. It is effectively a preventive tax to discourage us from attempting to exercise our rights and take part in our own governance. The supporters of the amendment claim that these fees are necessary to prevent those rare abuses of our open records law. But this amendment isn't aimed at abuses of our open records law. You get 1 hour of labor, 25 copies for free. That's it. And unlike an open records request for copies, there is no provision that a record keeper must provide an advanced estimate of labor costs. When you sign an inspection request, it would be a blank check putting you on the hook. And how much can that cost you? Our current regulations allowing labor costs to be charged only for document copies provides a fine example. A nonprofit group was asked to pay for 3 hours of labor for government contractors to send an electronic copy of their policies. 3 hours to send an email. This is not a unique example. You can talk to public interest lawyers, and they will tell you the same. No one has suggested a working remedy. It cannot be solved by creating a schedule of reasonable labor charges. Limiting the cost per hour does not address the problem. Each request is unique. Thank you.
April Bryant.
My name is Jennings. I'm the Finance Director and City Recorder for the City of Johnson City. So I handle all the public records requests. I work with our City Attorney in doing so, and I want to echo Ms. Ogden's introductory remarks. I think we have a really good working relationship with our local media and with our citizens, and we try to really bend over backwards to help them gain access to information. But as far as question number 1, we do have instances where you have very time-intensive requests, such as Ms. Ogden was telling us about, and those do take a lot of time away from our ability to serve our citizens. So my answer to number 1 was no and yes. I believe that reasonable requests that would fall within the 1 free hour of labor and that falls under the duplication guidelines, I don't think we should charge for that. But I think on these time-intensive inspections that there should be some reasonable charge, but that should be provided in an estimate up front. I think that will help the requesters to be a little more efficient in their request. There are a couple of examples of some time-intensive requests that do require some oversight by staff. These are not as simple as somebody showing up and saying, just let me go through the minutes. We have personnel records, and they are imaged. So we can't just sit someone at the computer and let them look through the images because there's confidential information. So we have to print those, redact those, and so there is a lot of time required with that. So anything that's stored digitally, it's not as simple as just letting somebody inspect it. We also have some sensitive documents within our accounts payable system. Recently we had an instance where the media asked for some documents, and we run a state inmate facility for females. So their medications, their medical bills, things like that are stored within our accounts payable system. So those are other things that would have to be redacted. So there are occasions where you think, well, there wouldn't be any sensitive information there, but you would be surprised at all the places that there are sensitive documents stored. As far as question number 2, if charges are permitted, as an accountant, I believe in consistency. So if charges are permitted, I think it should be consistent with the duplication. Should anything be exempted? Well, I'm in favor of electronics.
We try to put our minutes and agendas, best practices, say those should be on the website. Our financials, our annual reports and budgets should be. So those are, I do have a few amendments to the duplication, but those primarily relate to the 7-day rule. So I did email these.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Eddie Overholt and Brian Hornback.
Good evening. My name is Bill Bracken. I'm from Polk County. You may have to look it up. First, I must say that I was very delighted to hear that there are watchdog press involved in this process throughout the state. Unfortunately, Polk County doesn't have one of those. It's up to the citizens to try to do what it can do, what they can do, to keep government open, transparent, and above board, to let them know that at least there's another set of eyes. I've been fortunate in that I have not had an awful lot of undue fees imposed on my requests. I did have one, and it gave me insight into how fees could be used as a club to discourage people from looking further and keep the information closely held. You could look at the choice of method used to fulfill the request as a means to increase cost arbitrarily. Now, I acknowledge that in small enterprises, there needs to be a balance. You need to be able to balance the imposition of time and cost on the county, but it also has to be balanced against the people's right to know. In my opinion, the fallback position for costs has always been, I won't take the copies, I'll just come and look at the information. This discourages the imposition of the costs. If you were to change that and take that avenue away from the ordinary citizen, he has no other option other than to leave the field of play and say, well, I just won't have insight into what my county is doing. In my opinion, it would weaken the law that is meant to ensure openness and transparency. Thank you.
My name is April Bryant, and I'm the editor of Millichucky Guardian, which is a small online newspaper. The issue of charging for viewing public records is important to me, not only as a journalist, but as a citizen of the state of Tennessee, and most importantly, as a whistleblower. I was fired 5 days before a report aired on WATE exposing excessive spending by Morristown Utility Systems. I had tried making public records requests myself as an employee, but I was stonewalled, even after the intervention of the Open Records Council. So I reached out to WATE. Morristown Utilities charged over $900 for the records requested by WATE for their investigation. KUB was asked for the similar information. They were charged $2 for that information. Why did Morristown Utilities charge over $900? Because they had something to hide. And that's what will happen if these entities are allowed any means of preventing transparency. It's discriminatory toward poor citizens, and it's an insult to the people of Tennessee. What everyday taxpayer could afford to pay $900 for copies? This incident just illustrates that the schedule of reasonable charges is currently being abused already. We cannot be so blind to think that this will not be done to discourage the viewing of public records also. Representative McDaniel and Senator Tracy would lead us to believe that the taxpayers are abusing the open record system, but they seem to have forgotten that the taxpayers are already paying these public records custodians to do their job, and gathering requested information is their job. I would much rather see large amounts of my tax dollars spent on someone getting requested information versus these government entities wasting it on litigation, fighting transparency. That is certainly a more heinous waste of my money. With today's technologies, and all current public records should already be online. They should be redacted and published as they are filed. As a former information systems specialist, I know this is entirely doable, and in the end would save taxpayer money.
thousands of people would have instant access to the same document at virtually zero cost. I sincerely hope the Open Records Council will push for the rights of citizens and apply effort to getting Tennessee records online starting now for everyone, rich and poor, press, everyday citizens, and not diminish our abilities to monitor our own government. Abuse of the law in favor of the people and transparency is far superior to the abuse that will take place at the hands of public officials trying to hide information. Thank you.
Pamela Weston.
I'm sorry, just a second.
Mr. Hornback was next.
Eddie Brackett's next.
I'm sorry.
Eddie Brackett, you called Eddie Brackett before you
William
called me.
Bracken.
He spoke.
Oh, did he? I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Your turn.
I'm Brian Hornback. I've been a blogger in Knoxville for the last 11 years. The only question that I'm going to answer is number one, and that's no. I'll give you a specific example. In mid-July, a local official was seeking to run for office in another position, and I sought the travel records so to make my readers of my blog aware of the spending habits. And I was told that those records would be delayed through the current Open Records Act, and they were going to be delayed until the Friday that early voting would end. I was able to submit my open records request to the Knox County General Government, and I got those in a timely manner. I would simply ask that as individuals who choose to be involved in government and involved in community activities and helping folks like the Knoxville News Sentinel, the League of Women Voters, in educating the community, that you not charge citizens who are simply exercising their free speech, their free political speech, in helping to educate the community. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Mr. Monsieur.
As these folks were talking, I kind of remembered when I was an undergraduate and did an independent study on Superfund sites in East Tennessee, and went to the Superfund office, and there was a small wall of banker's boxes, which I had the privilege of going through, and I was thinking if I had to pay per page to inspect those documents, I would probably still be over there trying to come up with the money to pay for that. So in response to question number one, I say no, that citizens already pay all the costs related to the record creation, maintenance, and thus should not be charged to view them, nor should they be individually charged for activities related to their retrieval or their presentation. There are thousands of individuals at all levels of government that create and maintain those records, but the technology is available to make the creation, the storage, and access to those records efficient for all parties, both custodians and citizens. Remotely or electronically, citizens should be able to access those records quickly and to their heart's content. So it's time to think about moving the public records access discussion into the realm of readily available technological reality. And it's time to acknowledge that placing custodians in the business of designing, implementing, and collecting an information tax would do nothing to support our goal of transparent and open government. And if I can speak to question number 5 with regard to the schedule of reasonable charges. With regards to the utilization of an outside vendor to produce copies of requested records with the cost assessed by the vendor, I would think that capping those charges so that they could not exceed those which would have been incurred had the custodian been able to perform that activity should bring those charges into check. Thank you.
And everyone, please be sure to always you state your name for the record.
My name's Herbert Monsieur. I requested to speak to you and to remind all concerned, and particularly remind our legislature, that the first and most important matter to be considered in responding to these questions is the Constitution of Tennessee. We often refer to our federal Bill of Rights and the first 10 amendments to our federal Constitution. We in Tennessee also are protected by a Bill of Rights contained in Article 1 of the Tennessee Constitution, regarding the questions presented about charging fees to inspect records that belong to the people of Tennessee provided their answer in Article 1, Section 19 of their Constitution that says that the printing press shall be free to every person to examine the proceedings of the legislature or any branch or officer of the government. Now listen to me. And no law shall ever be made to restrain the right thereof. Charging for the right of the people to inspect records of their government procedures that belong to the people is a law made to restrain that constitutional right. Reasonable charges, however, for copying, on the other hand, is not permitted by the Constitution. It is though our forefathers who wrote our Constitution believed that sometime in the future we would be here tonight, and our legislature may consider restrictions on the right of the people to inspect by making the people pay for that right. I envision those patriots sitting in a room with a fire, drinking grogs of ale in their buckled shoes, stockings, knickers, and wigs, and while smoking long pipes trying to figure out how to tell us today what they meant when they said in 1796, no law shall ever be made to restrain the right of the people to inspect the records of their government. Then, almost mocking what we're doing here tonight, a notion occurred to somebody sitting there to divest the legislature from the authority to pass a law to restrain the right of the people to inspect the records of their government. That notion became a part of our Constitution in Article 11, Section 16. That provides, Section 16, Bill of Rights remain inviolate. The Declaration of Rights hereto prefixed is declared to be part of the Constitution of this state, and shall never be violated on any pretense whatsoever, and to guard against transgressions of the high powers we have delegated. We declare that everything in the Bill of Rights contained is accepted out of the general powers of government.
Sir. David Poulos. First for David Poulos. And please, if you could stay quiet so that the tape picks up the comments of the commenter.
Thank you. My name is Renee Oyos. I'm the Executive Director of the Tennessee Clean Water Network. We're an environmental advocacy organization, and our mission is to empower Tennesseans to claim their right to clean water and healthy communities. And one of the ways we do this is we inspect the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation's pollution discharge permits. Over the past 7 years, we have looked at over 500 permits. We've commented on 230 permits. And because of our access to these public records, we have appealed a handful of them. And so for these reasons, TCWN is against charging fees to inspect public records. These records are already bought and paid for by Tennessee taxpayers, and access should be free and unhindered. Charging fees merely to view a public record would be inconsistent with the Tennessee Constitution and Governor Haslam's focus on increasing transparency and accountability in state government through his Transparent Tennessee initiative. I would like to praise the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation, particularly the Department of Water Resources. A majority of the documents that we look at are already available online. Their goal internally is to have just about every paper document in their files available online, and I would encourage that our state government encourage other agencies to do the same. Also, we feel that there should be, if fees will be charged, that there should be a fee waiver similar to the Federal FOIA Act, and that there should be amendments made for allowing members of the public to photocopy or to scan documents and not be charged. But again, we are against the charge of any public documents. Thank you.
Georgiana Vines. I'm not speaking.
Hello, my name is Helen Burns Sharp. I'm a public interest advocate from Chattanooga, speaking in behalf of a new organization called Accountability for Taxpayer Money, or ATM. ATM is opposed to any changes in the Public Records Act that would permit governments to charge citizens to inspect public records. I testify as one who knows firsthand how difficult it already can be to get access to public records. Last year, I won a lawsuit in Hamilton County Chancery Court where I alleged violations of both the public records and public meetings statutes. Other citizens should not have to experience what I went through. Filing a lawsuit is a very expensive and time-consuming last resort. Charging a fee for inspection of public records would make it easier for governments to block access. It would be particularly unfair for citizens who cannot afford the fee and for journalists who try to keep us informed. Imposing a fee would be a step in the wrong direction. Even today, citizens are sometimes made to feel that they are the enemy when they request public records. Instead of creating a new barrier with a fee, we need to be looking for ways to remove existing bureaucratic obstacles, such as the development of best practices. We all, local government and citizens and state government, need to work at creating a climate where members of the public and government officials realize we are on the same team and wearing the same color jersey. And since I'm in Knoxville, I can say that should be Tennessee orange. Thank you.
My name is David Toulis. I'm a blogger in Chattanooga. I have the town's biggest pen. It's a 180-foot tower from which emanates an AM signal at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. So I'm a writer and a talk show host and own a radio station. Tennessee is a fat cat government, fat as could be. It is worth, all told, $79 billion. That's according to the 2014 CAFR, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. That figure is based on two sums. One is the state itself is worth $31.7 billion in net assets. The Tennessee Comprehensive Retirement System, which is the liquid asset capital pool that all the great tit from which every city, state, and county employee draws on for retirement, is worth $47 billion. Altogether, our state's government is worth, in capital measurement in paper dollars, $79 billion. So we should not be nickel and dimed when we make requests for records, no matter if we are onerous, troublesome, meddlesome, persistent. These are all things that are virtues. It's good to hear about the Constitution in our state. There are some other points to mention regarding our high document. The U.S. Constitution, just by the way, guarantees us in Article 4, Section 4, the Republican form of government, and that has been defined here very well. That is open government that belongs to the people. There is a distinction between government and the state. Now, the state itself, I think, is what doesn't want us to have this access. Government belongs to us. The government is, again, a different entity. Read Martin Van Creveld in his history, The Rise and Decline of the State, to see what that's about. But we are guaranteed a Republican form of government, and access to data, access to records, open, liberally granted, is part of that. There's another constitutional provision I just want to mention to you for your review, the Bill of Rights, Article Section 22, that says that perpetuities and monopolies are contrary to the genius of a free people. Now, a monopoly is a special favor, a grant to a special party, and in this proposed law, the monopoly becomes the state as librarian. If you're in the state somehow, you can get all the information you want from another state office. If you're not in the state, you have no business trading in the information. You have to buy your way over the barrier. So what's proposed is a monopoly. Thank you very much from Chattanooga.
Good afternoon. I'm Foster Arnett. I'm the Knox County Clerk. Jason, thank you for advising everybody to be short, and I'll be short. And Ann, thank you for all your help with the Tennessee Open Records Council. I had an issue here a couple of weeks ago, and Ann and her staff were extremely helpful. I've spent about 40 years in TV news as public information officer for the Knoxville Police Department. as a consultant across the country for media relations and now as the elected Knox County Clerk. And I would agree with my friend Mr. Monsieur and Mr. McElroy that we should not be charging any fees for viewing public records. They belong to the people. We shouldn't charge any fees either to the public or the media to view those. That's been my view ever since I was the Public Information Officer at KPD. It's my view now as the elected Clerk of Knox County. If you want to see them, come down, take a look. They're yours to look at. We have 3 ladies in our commission library. As you can imagine, we keep thousands and thousands and thousands of records. If somebody wants to see them, all they have to do is call. We'll make every effort to make sure they can see them. If it's a media on a deadline, then I'll do what I can to either fax it to them, email it to them, hand carry it to them, whatever. So we try to be as open, as honest as possible, and I agree with some of the other speakers. If we start charging for that right, I'm afraid that it's going to start some real problems with openness and transparency in our community. So I can only speak for my office, but I do agree there should not be any charges for viewing of public records. Thank you for this opportunity.
We have a representative from the Knox Police. I'm sorry, I can't read the. If they wanted to speak. They're not speaking. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yes, I'm Leland Wyckoff. I'm from Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. Let's dispatch quickly with the 5 questions. Number 1, no inspection fee. We already pay that. It's called taxes. Number 2, charges. If charges are for inspection are permitted, should we charge for inspection be governed in a manner similar to those for duplication? No. In parentheses, we say it's a reasonable charge. It's not always reasonable. And the reasonableness problem here is not just money, but time. The law assumed that there were good actors who were acting as the custodian of the records, and that they would approach this as an opportunity to be open from the outset. In many of our agencies across the state, local, state, etc., county, the presumption by the record keeper is that the record is not open. There is a presumption that you are not entitled to the record, and thus the legal battle begins. So the reasonable charge that's referenced is not reasonable because the law specifically forbids you to collect damages from the bad actor custodian who stymies the requests. 3, if charges for inspection are permitted, should any public records such as meeting records agendas, of course they should be open and they specifically should be exempted. 5, what amendments or changes should be made to the current schedule? The current schedule should be abolished and those copies should be free. Several of the other speakers have spoken eloquently to this. It is a failure of Tennessee to manage records. There is no reason that an electronic email record should cost anything above the taxes we've already paid. So Tennessee is behind the times on the production, storage, and retrieval of electronic records and must be improved. Custodians must be punished, and new laws should be passed allowing the public to receive damages when the bad actor acts bad. The agencies and oftentimes work very hard to expand and to layer on expenses to try and stymie the public from the record, and that must be addressed as well. Redaction costs, proper records management and creation, that problem is solved. Thank you.
Tim Shelton and Dee Snyder.
Well, I'm here. My name's Tim Shelton. I'm the Register of Deeds in Anderson County. I'm a current board member and also immediate past president of the County Officials Association of Tennessee. I'm here in response to the commission and their invitation. Our 4 affiliates are going to be meeting in the next couple of months, in particular through November. That's where we have our annual meeting. We're going to make some decisions at that time as far as our position. But what I'm here to do is to listen to comments made from the public, to share that with our members, to let them know the expressions made, to let them know the comments given, and then in turn we'll provide comments as well to the Comptroller that'll be made public as well at that time. I will share this with you as a custodian of records. I've been blessed to be in a county that puts records first and foremost. Our county commission has granted me the ability to put our records online for free, has granted us the permission to make copies in our office for free, and we found that to be very successful in Anderson County. We're blessed to have that. I think it starts first with that type of leadership from your commissions and from your mayors and so forth going forward. Let me encourage you that from leaving this meeting, you need to go back to your communities and voice that opinion to them as well. Don't necessarily leave it up to the state of Tennessee. A lot of decisions can be made at home without having to even apply some of these. A lot of these laws are may and can rather than shall. And so that allows county officials locally to make those decisions. And so let me encourage you to go back to those commissioners and those to your public communities and share your expressions there as well. A lot of good things can happen when people come together. And I thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for the invitation, Mr. Mumpower, and we'll be addressing you shortly.
Kathy Jones Terry and Cawood.
Straight ahead. Everybody else to the left.
I'm Dee Snyder, and for once in my life, I'll be brief. To question 1, my answer is no. It is vital that public records be equally accessible to all. Participation in democracy, informed participation in democracy, should not rest on the would-be participant having a certain specified amount of jingling change in the pocket. Thank you.
Left here.
Tom, a citizen, and whose last name I cannot read. Okay, thank you.
I'm Kathy Jones Terry. I'm the Clerk and Master for Hamblin County, and I've been asked by the county, State Court Clerks Association to deliver this message from our president, Danny Tanner, who is the Decatur County Circuit Court Clerk and president of the State Court Clerks Association. The State Court Clerks Association of Tennessee, by action of its Board of Directors, has endorsed the issue of charging for copies of public records for public inspection. Many times these records have to be copied by the records keeper for purposes of redacting certain private information which the records keeper is prohibited by law from releasing to the general public. Generally, the clerk does not charge for mere inspection of the record. However, if considerable staff time is required to assemble the public records for inspection, including the making of copies for purposes of redaction, a reasonable charge should be incurred by the party requesting the inspection. This prevents the county taxpayers from assuming the expense of a lengthy assembling of information for inspection, which may be used for commercial purposes. Therefore, we request the above-mentioned circumstances be taken into consideration by the Tennessee General Assembly when considering legislation addressing the Tennessee Public Records Act. Unreasonable and burdensome requests sometimes prevent the keeper of records from doing their daily duties in servicing the public. Danny Tanner, Circuit Court Clerk. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Tom Gangwer. I live in Farragut. First of all, coming here tonight was well worth it, not only because of the turnout, because I learned something about our Constitution. And it raised the whole question of why we're in the situation we're in. But be that as it may, we're in a certain situation, and that's what I'd like to address. All 5 questions revolve around and explicitly cite charges. What is implied in every question is charges to cover costs. So the core issue here is cost. Citizens here, level of effort, general descriptions, they need to be quantified. Cost, we've heard, involves people retrieving records, bringing them for the requester to review, and then at times copying them. So the kernel of the decision process must include and involve cost facts. I have not heard any or read any on circulating around this issue, just generalities. We citizens need cost factors such as average request, what's the size of it, the nature, we've heard about clear and vague. Well, what's the average request like in terms of clear and vague? And what are the fees associated with those average requests? What's the range in size and the nature of the request and the fees? What's the breakdown by county in terms of these costs? What is the efficiency in terms of performing the records request by county based on type and nature of the request? And finally, what is, out of those costs that would be broken out, how do they compare to what it costs internally to the government to process requests within the government? Citizens hear verbiage which boils down to it is about cost, and the costs are excessive. We need the cost facts so we can answer the question, is it really excessive? We citizens need cost facts. Don't just proclaim it, prove it. Thank you.
Michael Martinez.
My name is Mike Martinez, and I'm the president of the East Tennessee chapter of the Society of Professional Journalists. We, the board members of ETSPJ, oppose the proposed legislation that would establish fees for the inspection of public records under the Tennessee Public Records Act. ETSPJ is the local chapter of a 7,500 member strong Society of Professional Journalists, the nation's oldest and largest journalism organization. However, in addition to advocating for journalists today, we are also advocating for the public. We believe that government documents are the people's documents, and the people have a right and responsibility to be informed about their government's activities. We believe to charge for fees for the viewing of records would inhibit the public from being able to inspect records. We believe the public, through their tax dollars, already pays for the establishment of the records and for custodians who are responsible for maintaining the records. We do not believe that a citizen wanting to view these documents should have to pay to view the records again. Have to pay again to view the records. The Tennessee Code annotated points out, and I quote, that state policies and guidelines shall reflect the policy that providing information to the public is an essential function of a representative government and an integral part of the routine duties and responsibilities of public officers and employees. End quote. I'll repeat that. An integral part of the routine duties and responsibilities of public officers and employees. That does not mean that complying with requests to view records is beyond the scope of their everyday duties. The concern expressed by the legislators who introduced the bills is the cost of gathering, evaluating, and complying with records requests. We would suggest that there are alternative means to solving the efficiency problems of fulfilling open records requests rather than burdening the Tennessee Public Records Act and the ability of the public to view what they paid for with their tax dollars in the first place. We ask that the Open Records Council recommend against changing the law that would allow governments to charge citizens to view public records. Thank you for your time.
P. Bowls.
Not on? Okay.
and Robert Hill.
My name is Dr. Bonham Rule, and I'm president of Keller Bend Homeowners Association, which is in Southwest Knox County. And but I'm actually here as a citizen, and I'd like to thank y'all for having the meeting. Sorry I didn't sign up ahead of time, so I will submit more extensive comments. So I'm just going to answer the questions. Number one, no, that sort of alleviates 2 through 4. And number 5, I think it should be amended to abolish any charges, even for copies. Having been at a previous point in my life, going to the court clerk office and trying to get documents, at times we were, Ms. Hunter and I did this some years ago, we were treated as though we were outsiders. Now, this is a personal thing. I don't believe that this is a reflection of government either. I believe it's individuals holding these offices that behave this way. I don't have a disdain for government. I have a lot of respect for people that are in the bureaucracy, and so I'll leave that at that. So a few reflections. Obviously, we've all gotten some education here tonight by the various speakers. I think we need more public meetings like this where we speak to each other and we hear each other's ideas. And too much of what we do in government today is behind closed doors, or not government, but decisions and policies. And someone made a reference, and I know this is maybe not the right platform, but I'm going to do it anyway. Someone made a reference earlier to the transparency of the government, of the governor of Tennessee. Well, I'll just tell you right now, it is beyond pale to think that transparency involves and includes 9 days behind closed doors that we're going to sell off the state of Tennessee. So I don't view that as transparency. And so the source calling this a state of transparency in the state of Tennessee is sort of shocking and frightening. And that's why meetings like this are important, where we as citizens, we don't even all have to agree. And we don't have to shout at each other, and we don't have to do whatever. But it is very important in a democracy for us to come together and exchange ideas and not just read interpretations. While I appreciate the press, and the press is very good at bringing these issues out, and we wouldn't know about so many things if the press didn't dig around and find out about these things going on 9 days to submit a proposal to sell the whole state of Tennessee. Thank you. But thank you for having the meeting. Thank you for everyone who took the time to come and speak, whether I agree with you or not. That's what a democracy is. It's an exchange of ideas, and it's government of the people, by the people, and for the people, hopefully. Thank you so much.
Mr. Hill?
Here. My name is Robert Hill. I'm a resident of Farragut, 11504 Mountain View Road. I'm a citizen of the United States, the state of Tennessee, the county of Knox, and the town of Farragut. I'm a professional engineer by trade. Have been practicing that since 1950. That's 65 years. I've been retired for the last 20 years, and during the last 20 years I've spent a lot of time with one of my environmental organizations that I belong to, the Sierra Club. I speak for myself and not for them, but they will make comments about this on their own as a club. But in the work that I've done, it's all pro bono, on environmental issues, development, construction, operating plants, just facilities in general. A good record file is worth its weight in gold because it tells you what the history of the project is. It tells you when you inspect it and you know your business, it'll tell you what happened but what's not there. And that worries me a lot, that what's not there for it. A lot of things in this state, and this is not the records department's bailiwick, but it is the legislature's bailiwick. A lot of activities in this state and in this county and the towns occur between an applicant and a government agency. There's no record in general
of that meeting. Those kinds of meetings often have decisions made which affect the outcome of the project and the direction of the project. When you're doing a post-mortem, you naturally come to those things and say, well, I wonder what happened here. If it's not in the record file, you have to go digging. But it's not the job of the records business in the state to determine if everything is there. It's their business to keep the records in a way that they can be accessed by the public with the least possible effort. Question number one, I say no. I'll give in extended remarks my answers to questions 2, 3, 4, and 5. But I would, if there are any legislators here, I would recommend that they look at the issue that I mentioned there about what happens in the government, between the government and an applicant before the record starts. That needs to be looked at carefully. I would say that having some of that information would make it easy to determine whether an proposed activity is effective or not and legal or not. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and speak, and I'll heed the bell and sit down.
Jason Horn.
I'm Jason Horn. I'm representing Bristol, Tennessee City Schools. I think this is a really cool thing. After reading political comments on Facebook, it's nice to see how people do it face to face. It's so much better. Our position as Bristol, Tennessee City Schools is we are constantly terrified of the gigantic records requests that we cannot fill in a timely fashion or afford to fill. Our answer for question number 1 would be yes, but only for unreasonable requests. I know that probably lawyers in the room are like, well, how are you going to define what's reasonable and unreasonable? I'll give you an example. A parent was angry because his son was not playing enough football or on the field enough. So he made a request to see every email from every football coach and every principal that was involved, and then every upper level administrator. What that would require to procure the records, not to copy them, would be to go through every single email, print them all off. After you print them off, have somebody go through with a black pen and redact them all, or student names out of all of them. At least you would have to see them, even if you didn't mark anything. Now, take into account the average number of emails that a principal in my school system receives, and we're tiny. We're talking about 5 elementary schools, a middle school, and a high school, 42,000 emails a year. So if somebody wanted to see a principal's entire emails for a year, somebody would have to go through 42,000. How much time would it take this whole room to go through that many emails? It would take a long time. So it's hard to, I guess, legally define what an unreasonable request is, but that could shut us down. We don't have the people for it. What would have to happen is, and a lot of people say great things about technology, and I tend to agree with you, where protecting privacy isn't a concern, why isn't it all online? I would love, like if it weren't for FERPA, we could do that. We could just throw it all up there and it wouldn't be a big deal. But we can't do that. So a IT person, our network administrator, of which we have one, our network administrator would have to go through and do the keyword search. And that's the problem. If you're not looking for a specific thing, if you just want the omnibus record of everything, then it takes that long. If we decided, okay, we are going to be proactive and just print everything out, think of all the paper that wastes. What would the Sierra Club think about that? They wouldn't like that. So that's the point, is that we want to protect the taxpayers. We are freedom-loving people and want to be transparent, but we don't want to be held hostage by numerous records requests that keep us from educating children, because that's what we're spending our money on. Bing. Thank you.
We had several people who had indicated that they might want to speak. So I guess first I would start off that anybody who
not show, so my count was off. I apologize.
So has anybody...
I'd like to say a few words, but I didn't sign up to speak. Is that okay?
Well, that's what we're asking right now. We have time left for those who didn't. If you will, come on up, state your name. And let me say, this has all been recorded. We're going to put it on YouTube. The recording will be on YouTube. You'll be able to access that later.
I would have dressed better if I'd known that.
Well, no video.
Audio, no video.
You look great for the audio. Come on up, state your name, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
My name is Judy Greason. I'm a resident of Clinton, Tennessee. I am the retired library director of the Clinch River Regional Library. At the time when I was the director, it was the Clinch Powell Regional Library, and that is located in Clinton. But I speak as a citizen and as a retired librarian. And also, regional libraries are under the direction of the Tennessee State Library and Archives in Nashville, so I was a state employee. I learned of this hearing, and I just felt I wanted to come to speak as a private citizen and as a retired librarian concerned for the access to open records. As librarians, we want people to have information. We want them to have it freely at their access, at their local library, or now, of course, with technology at their computer. I do not believe that a charge should be made for access to the records. I agree that perhaps photocopies or other kinds of copies or time taken to make those might be a charge for those. But just to have the access to the records, either by going into an office or by a click at your home or public access computer, perhaps in a library, that access should be free and of no charge. I think the access to open records is a service of state government that we've already paid for with our tax dollars. That service is something that can be personal between the individual and the state of Tennessee, or the government of the state of Tennessee, or the public service of the state of Tennessee. I know we could all relate to having roads. We all drive on roads that are paid for by state taxes, or we access public buildings that are paid for by state taxes, but we all do that. But having one individual be able to access a public record that they personally need for whatever reason, I think that's a more connected and a more individualistic service that the state of Tennessee can serve a citizen of the state of Tennessee. And for that reason, I hope that the legislator would consider not to be charging for access to the records. And I understand the situation that the gentleman from Bristol pointed out, that there may be times when it's an unreasonable request, but those may be able to be negotiated somehow on a individual basis. But just as a person coming in and wanting a reasonable request for an access to a record, I don't believe they should be charged for that. Thank you.
This might be a little bit odd in that Kevin and Laura Baker, we drove all the way from Sumner County, a little over 3 hours, I guess it took us to get here. We had prepared comments. We're going to save them for tomorrow, but we were concerned that nobody would show up. I am so in awe of you all. This is important. This is beyond important.
We all got to get your picture. You guys are awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you to the state for facilitating this.
Yeah.
This is very, very important.
Anyone else that wasn't signed up would like to speak? Before we take questions, if we can, and we will, if there's time left, anybody else want to make 3 minutes of remarks?
Can we come up and finish our remarks?
Let's make sure there's nobody else. Question. There was a question. Yes, sir.
For those of us who are going to put in the remarks and answers 2, 3, 4, and 5 and anything else. Will there be a record that we can view of the questions and comments from the participants here so that we can see what the whole story is?
Yes, I am.
We are going to put the audio file from today's meeting up on the web for people to listen to. The comments that we have received in through comments.open.records@cot.tn.gov, we are seeking to figure out the best way to get them available. It is our intent to have them available. They're quite extensive. We may just have them available, and they, I believe, are going to be too large for us to email to people, so that we could make them available in an electronic basis, but would not be able to email all of them out. But they are public records, and they will be available. We are attempting to see if there's any way we can have a more easily read version. Otherwise, you'll be going through multiple pages, but they are open. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I'd recommend you use the electronic version. We can figure it out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would encourage you, please have your comments in no later than September 30th so that we can timely report to the legislature. I believe in that I've seen, this is the last call. Yes.
Yeah, in many of the interactions with custodians, they claim an ignorance of the law, but, we don't know. And I'm aware that the Office of Counsel of Public Records provides training. And unfortunately, it's not a requirement for local governments to take this. So then they can easily hide behind this, we don't know, but they won't go to your training. So is there some look at possibly requiring mandatory training so that we can address a lot of these repetitive denials by different units of government?
I'll tell you what we can do most easily is pass that comment along, again, to lawmakers.
I do know that many other organizations beyond the Office of Open Records Counsel do provide educational opportunities. MTAS, CTAS, several of the other associations provide it. I think you are correct, though, in saying attendance for that particular topic is not mandatory.
So we could maybe pass on then that we'd like that to be mandatory.
We can pass it on, and in fact, it'll be on YouTube and an audio file. Anybody else? I almost feel like my brother. He's a preacher. He has that altar call at the end.
But I would like to mention again that we do have online using SurveyMonkey. Surveys, one for citizens and then one for record custodians. As of 10:30 yesterday, we had received 547 responses. 310 were from citizens and 237 were from governmental entities. We anticipate taking that survey offline by the end of the month also. So again, comments regarding the question on the inspection of records and whether a charge should be allowed, please send all of those to comments.open.records@cot.tn.gov and continue to use the email address open.records@cot.tn.gov, not only for your public records or open records questions, but also several commenters had reference to the Tennessee Open Meetings Act, which is our other Transparency Act. Sometimes folks do send to my direct email address, ann.butterworth, but I would encourage you to send any issues related to open records and open meetings to the open.records, because more than just myself has eyes on that email account.
With that question?
Yes. What do you do if you make a records request and you make a real simple request, and instead you get the wrong information, and you're going to have to ask again? How do you go about getting the information that you requested.
Well, is
rather than-
Deborah Fisher still here?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Deborah Fisher had a presentation the other day that I attended, and she had a wonderful image. She had a picture, there were 3 pictures, and they were of swings in a tree. And I'm not going to do a very good job of describing it, but basically the first picture was entitled, "What the Requester Asked For." The middle picture was of this very elaborate backyard swing, which was what the custodian provided. And then the last image, I believe, was a simple tire tied to a rope, and that was what the requester had intended to receive. So part of the problem is when you make the request and you believe you are clear, if you ask the custodian to repeat back to you what you have asked for, to make sure they have actually heard it, then perhaps at that time you can clarify what it is that you're requesting. If you've asked for copies and the custodian comes back with an estimate of those and you feel it is high, again, clarify to make sure that the records being provided to you are the ones that you want. If it comes down to a true inability to communicate on what you're trying to get to, the Office of Open Records Counsel at that point is able to try to help you with clarifying those records. We do not get involved prior to the request being made, but once a request has been made and you are having issues getting the records that you have requested, that is something our office is available to assist with.
I know that in Loudoun County, we've had problems, the custodian not being able to figure out what the fee was in order to charge you for records.
And do remember that the Schedule of Reasonable Charges, which was enacted under the Tennessee Public Records Act, is not the only source for authority to charge for records. There are many provisions in the Tennessee Code that set out specific charges for types of records. So just because you may be charged an amount higher than 15 cents, that still may be a legal charge because clerks of court have very specific statutory fees. So, but if you are asking for a record under the Public Records Act and there is not a separate statutory provision for a charge, and you are charged more than 15 cents for a black and white either letter or legal size copy, you as a citizen have the right to request first to see the properly adopted rule, the custodian. They cannot rely just on the Schedule of Reasonable Charges. They have to separately have enacted a rule regarding the charges. And if that charge is higher than 15 cents, you have the right to request the calculation, because the 15 cents is a safe harbor that they can charge. But if they wish to charge more, they're permitted, but they need to have, and they have to have the documentation behind it to charge you a higher amount per page.
All right, yes.
Did you say that a link to the survey is published online on your website?
Yes, in fact, if we have additional copies right here, I'm sorry, it's not on this page, but if you go to our website, the link is there, but it's www.surveymonkey.com/R/OORC citizen. Right there.
I don't believe there's any, excuse me, I don't believe there's anybody else that wants to speak. I want to again state what we stated at the beginning, that we appreciate this tremendous turnout. We can assure you that every comment that was collected tonight will be delivered to the legislature. In addition, I can assure you that any survey that's taken via the web link we just discussed, anyone that started will be delivered, as well as your written comments. They are public records. They will be made available, and they will be made available to the legislature, which will be considering this issue in the future. If you'd like to do this again, you can come to Nashville. We're going to do it. We're going to do it at 10 a.m. Central, or 10 a.m. Central Time in the morning, the 16th floor of the Comptroller's office downtown. If you do come, you're going to want to arrive early. There's building security you'll have to pass through. And if you really want to do it again, join us in Jackson on Thursday, 3 to 5 Central Time, again at the Comptroller's office in Jackson. Thank you very, very much. We appreciate you.
Wow, that was impressive. Yeah, good lineup.
What's up, Mayor? How are you?
Fine, how are you doing?
But I would encourage
Good comments.
I came in here unprepared.
Well, I have a cold and
What's up, man? How are you? Sweet. Thank you. I know. Good to see you, brother.
Showed a lot of interest. We will